Take a look behind the curtain with a real whistleblower and American patriot. Prepare to embrace the uncomfortable truth because this program has no time for comforting lies. Here is civil liberties enthusiast, Second Amendment defender, and recovering FBI agent Kyle Seraphin.
Well, hello, my friends, and welcome to the Kyle Seraphin Show for Wednesday. And it is January the 28th. We are coming to the end of January. And man, it's ugly out there. And I don't just mean the weather here in Texas where people can't drive. Let me just do a little bit of housekeeping right up front. For those of you that wanted to respond to my post yesterday about two little specific things that I said about Texas. It's always funny. If you poke a Texan, you will get their ire. And this meme really gets people in Texas going for some reason. Number one, don't argue with me that you know how to drive in the snow or the ice. Maybe you do, but your neighbors don't. So let's be real. And I don't mean that as neighbors in the communist sense. I mean the people that actually live next to you. They don't know how to drive in the snow. And I watched them. And I did. And the second thing that I got is that people said, well, Austin isn't real Texas. Ladies, gentlemen, people who live in Texas, how many of you can walk out your front door and in a few minutes, let's say like 3 to 5, smack a cow in the butt, give a chicken a hug, give a sheep or a goat a hug? I live next to all that, so don't tell me I don't live in real Texas. But we did get some people really riled up. They were very upset that I said Texans can't drive. It's a universal fact. And the reason is because we don't really get winter here. We don't get winter on any given basis. And we don't actually have snow plows or salt trucks or the ability to go out and fix this thing. So, all right, take it easy now. All right, so we're going to get into today's program and we're going to be talking about this concept that is floated out there. Now, suddenly people on the political right are defending a Donald Trump situation. It's a situation. He says dumb things. The man walks out and he just speaks from the cuff. He draws from the hip and he fires off, metaphorically speaking, just ridiculous statements about the Second Amendment. And then you get people over on Fox News and they try to do the same thing. We're going to be talking about the concept of absolutism. It's a thing. It means something. These words have meanings. This is kind of giving us those same vibes like the Princess Bride, where it says, I don't think you know what that word means. If you say I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, but, and then the next thing you do is all the things that are non-absolutist, then you're not a Second Amendment absolutist. You don't have to be, by the way. You're allowed to have a nuanced and moderate position. I don't. I'm an extremist. I have a totally extreme position. I had a buddy of mine who works for Gun Owners of America. I shouldn't say much more than that. I have a friend who was talking to me about being an absolutist on the Second Amendment, and he said, not only do I believe that everybody should be able to own a gun in this country, but I believe people in prison should be able to own guns and settle their disputes that way. That's truly absolute, isn't it? If you think everybody has a quote-unquote right to do it, they have a right to eat, they have a right to breathe, they have a right to do whatever. If you say the word right, it means that they are entitled to that thing. And if you're an absolutist on that right, well, it involves some really wild thinking. Let's go ahead and push that through to where it ends up. By the way, I'm not sure that an armed, segregated population is the worst thing. If you get a bunch of prisoners in and they all have guns, they probably would be very polite. And, or maybe we'd end up with like Tombstone every single day and kind of an OK Corral situation. Also, that might be okay if that's what you mean when you say absolutism. So we're going to talk about the Second Amendment and what it means absolutely. We're also going to talk about a couple of other things that have been popping into my feed. Maybe some of the things we're being distracted from. Donald Trump is talking about midterms. That's not a shock, so we'll go a little quick on that. And then I do think this opportunity that is popping up has done one of two things. We've seen moderate people on the left. Suddenly, they care about the 10th Amendment. They care about the Second Amendment. They care about American liberties. I'm not sure that they do, but I'm welcoming them in. Come on in. Let's have that conversation together. Let's find some common ground, and then I'm going to hold you to it. That wouldn't be bad. We're also seeing the communists kind of unmask themselves. And they are using that term neighbors, not by the term of people who live next to you, but the term neighbors in so much as it is a sort of, it's a stand-in for the word comrade. And I can't unhear it. Once I made that connection, and I did that sometime maybe last week or the week, probably 2 weeks ago, when I realized that that was going to be the terminology that was going to be pushed forward in these shootings, comrade and neighbors are interchangeable to the communist types, to the radicals, to the people that don't hold bacon cheeseburger nationalist central dominant culture beliefs. And once you start thinking about that, you should be very, very careful of any politician willing to use those words. All right. I made a short announcement over in our chat earlier about something that we're going to be doing over on YouTube. Oh, I lost the Rumble chat. We got to put the Rumble chat on there. That's not a good place for it. Made a little announcement to those folks, and sometimes you guys will get something different in each one of the chats. So if you're not actually part of our YouTube community, you might want to do that, especially if you're a fan of this topic today. There's our chat. It's going to be a secret until we're ready for it. So we're not quite there yet. All right, let's do a quick read from my friends over at Silent. One of the things that I do actually believe in is sort of an absolutist position on free speech. I think you should be able to say whatever you want. That doesn't mean that there's not some consequences. You may want to get away from the government who could want to take a look at what you're doing. You're seeing there some footage from SHOT Show 2025. I've got some new footage with Aaron. I will tell you, the spoiler alert, the best thing that they have going right now is a new colorway. And if you're a multicam black guy, which means that all colors that are roughly around the shade of black work for you, then they've upgraded their colors. And so I'll show you guys that pretty soon as I get those videos edited. Let's check it out. Your phone is a tracking device. Mine is actually sitting in a Faraday case right now because government agencies and big tech and corporate data brokers and cyber criminals and even telemarketers want to bother you while you're trying to do your podcast. They all want a piece of your digital footprint or your time, and they don't have to ask. They just pick up the phone and they dial you up. And that's why Silent exists. It's slnt.com/KYLE. Use my name at checkout. You're going to get free shipping on qualified orders. You're going to get 15% off the total order, and you're not going to get the cheapest product out there. You're going to get a really, really well-made product that actually works. While I was standing at the Silent booth, we started talking about this. Obviously, it blocks things like all the cell phone signals, the Wi-Fi, the Bluetooth, the GPS, the RFID, the near-field communications, the tracking things, all the remote access, and all that kind of stuff. But also, we were talking about it to some folks that just kind of walked by and had a kind of fun opportunity to sell the E3 Everyday Faraday bag to complete strangers that just rolled up. They said, hey, what do you think about this backpack? And I'm like, let me tell you something. I don't work for this company. I carry this backpack. I literally carried it every single day while I was at SHOT Show. So if you guys think that I shill for a product that I'm not going to own and carry around, this one made it. I actually put it inside of a suitcase and carried a checked bag so that I could bring that bag with me because my podcast had to be on the carry-on side. Let me just say, check out the link in the show description. You will not be disappointed. They are not the cheapest products. They are the best products that I've seen on there. Their design is flawless. It's really, really smart, and you'll enjoy it. And even some of the little upgrades they made on the E3 Everyday Faraday backpack are better. They're even better than they were before. So, all right, that's what we're going to do. Let's get into today's program starting right now. We got a lot to talk about. And nothing for nothing, I'm always going to be a gear guy. I can't help it. There's these two little expressions that people have for you when you're a person that spent a lot of money on gear. If you're in law enforcement or the military, you guys have all met this guy. They call you a gear queer, which is not a very nice thing to say, but just embrace it if you're that guy. And I am that guy, so I just embrace it. And the other one they always use is tackleberry. And tackleberry is sort of an offshoot from the Police Academy movies. There was a guy named Eugene Tackleberry. And Eugene was like the big revolver guy. He always wanted bigger and better guns and so on and so forth, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, Eugene Tackleberry. So people will call you a Tackleberry as though it is a thing. That's the guy who owns a bunch of gear. So we're going to talk about the Second Amendment. I just want to put it up on the screen at the beginning. I'm going to kind of tease out where we're going to go with this because there was a lot of statements being made over the last couple of days in the wake of a shooting of a VA nurse. And one of the weirdest things about the VA nurse situation is that people are acting like working at the VA makes you a veteran. Just a momentary tangent, if you will. Working for the VA doesn't make you a veteran. I don't know why it would. There are some really wonderful people that work at the VA. I'm certain of it. I've met maybe one or two of them. I've also met a lot of crappy people at the VA. So have you, if you're a veteran and you've gone to a VA. I've gone to the VA in Connecticut. I've gone in New Mexico, I've gone in Texas, and I've gone in Virginia. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. I've been to the VA in Washington, D.C. There are a ton of rotten people that absolutely hate their job and hate veterans that work at the VA, and that's the only job they could get. So let's not pretend that you're some sort of freaking hero simply because you showed up and you got a job at the VA. That does not make you something special per se. It's a job. Everybody has the potential of turning their job into something special. I have no idea whether this guy, Alex Pretty, was or was not a wonderful person, but the idea that you've just been associated with a really shitty government organization as the VA, which does all kinds of garbage stuff, that doesn't make you a hero. It doesn't make you a veteran. It doesn't even, I guess it's veteran adjacent. But there's some real strange things that are being done in the media space right now about how people are talking about it. So, that being said, I want to kind of evaluate that guy's situation because he's brought up a Second Amendment conversation in this country. And suddenly the people on the political left are defending it. The same people that thought Kyle Rittenhouse should be hung from the light poles suddenly have a newfound respect for the 2A. And so we'll read the words. They're pretty easy to understand, and yet it turns out we have a load of infringements on this very simple amendment, and it is a second-class citizen, including under the Trump administration, in my experience. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, comma, that's the preparatory clause there, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. I do not know why this is so complicated. I do not know why people think that this is something that could be debatable or that the meaning is somehow, it's not obvious to those who read it in plain English. There are many reasons why you might find things in the Constitution using words or verbiage or phrasing that is a little bit confusing. This is not one of those things. Shall not be infringed is pretty straightforward. Now, that means at the federal level. Unfortunately, we've had this strange sort of turn of events in this country where we now believe in the supremacy clause when it suits us, but we also believe in state rights when that's helpful. And I say that as a we. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek sarcasm, because this is really a position of the political left, which is to say the Republicans and the Democrats. If you are not one of those people, if you are not a hardcore leftist, which is where the Democrat Party is at least facing if they are not all there. Many of the people that vote don't even realize how extreme their party is. Or you're not a Republican, which is to say a 90s liberal, which is a thing too. That's what Donald Trump is. And I'm not trying to be mean. I'm trying to just label the man as he is accurately. It is worth understanding that we are all a product of our training, our experience, our time on this earth. We all have a specific and unique experience on being on this planet. And being raised in New York City is a thing that is different than almost any other place that you could be raised. And being a 90s Democrat and being consistent in that, I don't not respect it. I just like us to refer to that thing as what it is. There are very few things. I would say that Donald Trump is barely more conservative on a very small number of issues than Bill Clinton was. And he's actually to the left of Bill Clinton on other things because they were not palatable at the time. Doesn't mean Bill Clinton didn't think that you should have gay marriage. I'm just saying that it wasn't a palatable position for the Democrats to go out there and talk about. It's worth us being honest about it. And that does not make us mean-spirited. There's a lot of information that we should be taking in, evaluating, and then considering, hey, what do we do with this information? We really need a political right in America. And I'm not saying that there's a federal solution, nor have I ever said that. I actually think the solution is at the states level. And interestingly enough, people on the political left are starting to get there. We will end the show by showing you that Josh Shapiro, who's the governor of PA in Pennsylvania, he's actually bringing up the 10th Amendment. Did I not say this about 2 years ago, that we need a 10th Amendment revolution in this country? Would it not be wild that the shooting of a VA nurse while carrying a lawfully permitted whatever by state law and under federal law, he should be allowed to own and carry it? Wouldn't it be weird for us to have a Second Amendment and a 10th Amendment discussion for the exact opposite reasons that you would think because the political left introduces it into the lexicon? I'm here for it. We're watching some of the dumbest timeline play out, so that's part of it. All right, let's go to this story, which was brought to my attention by one of our listeners or potentially just a follower over on X. This does bother me. Something my wife and I talk about quite a bit. Texas is not the Texas that I grew up in. This is Governor Greg Abbott. He's ordered Texas universities and state universities as of yesterday to halt the new H-1B visa petitions, which are being used by employers to hire foreign workers with specialized skills, and said, hold off on this till next year. This seems like a very cynical sort of move when the midterms are coming up and we have state elections coming up soon, that you want to try to make everybody feel good at the end of the year. I think that there is a common political instinct to perform in the last 6 months prior to an election. so that people have the most frequent or most recent thing that they've heard will actually go their way. I don't like it. I think it's actually ugly. I have some Fox News footage that I will show you in a moment, which makes me believe that that's just what they think about you. They just think that you're so dumb that you have the memory of a goldfish. What they don't do is tell you about how many people they've already let in. So anyway, Governor Greg Abbott halts the new H-1B visa petitions for state agencies for university systems. This is not going to stop everything in Texas. It's just for some things, the small number of things that are hired by the state government. The pause in this red state, which is home to tens of thousands of H-1B visa holders, comes amid actions by the Trump administration in reshaping the visa program. And critics have argued that it's become a pipeline for overseas workers willing to work for lower pay and taking job opportunities from Americans. Fact check, most likely true in most industries. Supporters say the program is vital to tap top global talent and fill specialized roles and drive innovation. Sure it is. Sure it is, if that's only what it was used for, but that's not what it's used for. Businesses always find the thing that suits them, even if in the long term, it actually destroys their children's experience. I want to go to a quick little AI question because the answer is not apparently obvious. And I did want to know, how many Indians have migrated to Texas using these programs? There's no answer. My wife and I have had multiple different sort of research pieces that showed up as many as 1 million people in Texas, which is a lot. It's 5% of Texas. That would be about 3 times or 4 times the national average for the number of Indian immigrants in an area. And I don't have a problem with Indian people, just to be like totally fair, as Indians. I have a problem with them because they can't be bacon cheeseburger nationalists for the most part. If they cannot sit, by the way, one of our listeners sent us this, little shout out to Donut Patrol, sent me a bacon cheeseburger nationalist coffee mug, which I've been using, only because I really like the shape. It's like a diner mug. If we have 1 million people here, if we have 5% of this population in the state of Texas, which many of you think is very red, but people who are honest about it recognize that it has blue cities and red counties. What have we done here? Why is it that we have the second largest Indian population in the entire United States? What is the advantage to people who want to raise bacon cheeseburger nationalist children, who want to sit in their house, walk out, and then generally speaking, run into people that have the same values and experiences? Do I want them driving trucks? Do I want them being landlords? Do I want them running the GOP party here? America has a real issue, and it's worth talking about it in not a racist way and not in a mean-spirited way, but in just a very simple acknowledgement that we used to bring people in to this country, not just because of what they were able to offer, but also because they wanted to be here. They wanted to come here and work. They wanted to start at the bottom of the ladder and work their way up. They also shared our values, by and large. When you bring in people from Western civilizations, even if you bring in people from Latin American countries, generally speaking, they're growing up in a Christian-founded country. They were all sort of colonized by the Europeans and so on. So they start from a base of Christianity. Common values. Doesn't mean they're living it. Doesn't mean that their experience in their own country has that. But we start bringing in people that have very different value systems. They're going to have a really hard time acclimating to the majority culture here, to the dominant culture. And we can have people that are not part of the dominant culture, but they can't come in and overwhelm the dominant culture. And I really don't like the idea that they're in here running for office and trying to change things when you just got here. I used to have this discussion with people that are former liberals. You're new to the conservative movement. You're new to being a conservative in general. How about you shut the hell up and just listen for a few minutes? How about you not go out there and tell everybody, oh, I'm new here and here's my wonderful ideas. It's like, well, you had really crappy ideas about 10 seconds ago. So maybe you just put a cork in it and listen for a little bit. This is the reason why whenever I see political commentators that are under the age of 30, I'm like, how much life have you really lived? There's probably a small percentage of them that have lived some really interesting life, in which case, fine. But if you haven't lived that life of massive diverse experience, if you haven't had, different jobs and a family and a marriage and children and paid taxes for a decade or two and had your ideas really kind of steep into who you are and know that you've held on to them for a long period of time, you can defend them. Why are you coming out here and trying to be a voice for anything of any kind? I don't get it. And I don't get why people are interested in it, because they're loud, because they have the ability to get on front of a camera and they can edit it into a bunch of jump cuts. That really turns me off. We had this discussion in while I was at SHOT Show. Somebody, I don't remember where it was. It was just a conversation about why is it that these young people want to pop up and give their takes on things. Just because you're articulate and good looking doesn't mean that you know anything. Generally speaking, we used to have this understanding in America that with age can come wisdom. There's a lot of dumb old people. Let's be real. Some of you guys are friends with them. That's fine. There's a lot of really brilliant young people, but they don't really know what's going on because they haven't lived enough life to be able to do it. There's this kind of power balance. And this is why I don't want people over the age of 65 in office. And it's why I don't want people under the age of, 30 getting into office. How about you live a few minutes? How about you kind of settle in to a space before you start trying to run it? And how about if you moved here from some other crap country? You're not going to be in charge of our country. That would be fine with me. I want nobody. I don't want a single Ilhan Omar, not because I'm mad at Ilhan Omar, but when you say something like, I'm a Somali American, but you're from Somalia, you're a Somali to me. You will be. Your children may grow up in this culture, but you didn't. And so it's very strange because there's some Ilhan Omar stuff that's in the news as well. I'm going to put this up on the screen. What it says is that as of 2025, 2026, over 450,000, as many as 570,000 Indian Americans reside in Texas. Now, I grew up with people who were Indian, had Indian background or were ethnically Indian, but they were Americans. When I was younger, I had one or two, guys in my class, darker skin, whatever. Their family somewhere back came from India, but they were all Christians. They went to Christian schools with me. That wasn't problematic at all because they shared the same values. It's when you start importing people that can't get along with the bacon cheeseburger nationalist ideas, that they're maybe even offended by the concept of you eating things that are American fare. That seems problematic. And the other problem is we don't have good numbers. We continue to not have good numbers. This is really wild. If you read this AI chunk, which is basically grabbing from a bunch of different sort of, fact-checking sources, there's a major concentration in the DFW area, 220 to 270,000 Indian Americans. We have something similar down here in Austin, south of me, because I don't live in Austin proper. But then you start looking at these numbers and it says the Indian community is a major contributor to the rapid Asian population growth in Texas, which saw an increase of 613,092 people between 2010 and 2020. I'll just scroll this down so you guys can see that part on the screen because it's kind of funny. So how could we have 570,000, which is what the number says, when we've had an increase in the last, in the previous decade up to 613K? I don't get it. That number of 1 million might be closer that my wife was finding in some of the research she's done. That's a lot of people. And it has a necessary change. And I'm bringing this up because when we have a governor that's going to go out there who last year posted something saying that Texas and India have an inextricable link and there are special partners in commerce and trade, it makes you wonder who they're serving. I don't like it. I'll just be real fair with you. I do not like it. I don't like what these people have come in and brought to my country. They haven't added a lot of value. I don't mind people coming and immigrating here, but I do want to see assimilation, and we're not seeing that. All right. Ilhan Omar. Let's do that before we get into any of the video clips and some of the discussions about midterms, because I think that they think you're dumb enough to forget all of this stuff. This was a big deal during the election season. Making America great again also meant make America part of the dominant culture again. The concept of bacon cheeseburger nationalism is my cute way of saying you can have a secular version of dominant culture and Christian nationalism without having to go out there and proselytize to everyone. I just say that if you happen to share the same values as me, because you happen to grow up in a dominant Christian nation, which it was when I was a kid and when most of you were kids, unless you are a much younger part of our audience, which is a fraction, then you remember a Christian nation, whether or not everybody went out there and wore it on their sleeve. We would not have had an Ilhan Omar 25 or 30 years ago. And for good reason. Because if you came here from a war-torn garbage country, then maybe you should shut up and be grateful for being here and not sit there and tell us how it needs to be run. I also don't like that this guy, this chubby dude, decided to go and spray some unknown substance, which they're really keen on not knowing what the substance is. For a news organization, CBS and all the others that have reported it, none of these people know what the substance was. And they really want you to know that it's a substance that is still unknown. It's probably like vinegar or something. He seemed to have it in a syringe, which is even weirder. This looks staged. I'm going to tell you that I don't know that for any kind of a fact. It's my absolute opinion. But after watching the guy, the video of the guy, the footage of the guy, the face of the guy after he got arrested, it freaking looks staged. So here you go. A man in Minnesota sprayed Ilhan Omar, their representative, with an unknown liquid. It's so unknown that it's unknown, the substance that is unknown. I'm only saying that because every freaking story tells us that it's an unknown liquid. She vowed not to be intimidated, and she declined to immediately leave the event to get checked out. She's so brave, and she's so strong. She's handled war. She can handle a guy spraying something on her, like her brother or whatever. I'm just going to go right past that. There was an obvious, easy joke there. The alleged perpetrator, who local police identified as 50-year-old Anthony Kazmierzak, was immediately apprehended. He was actually tackled right there on scene. And he was booked into the Hennepin County Jail on suspicion of third-degree assault, so said the Minneapolis PD. Minneapolis PD, very quick to jump on a fat guy in his 50s who's indoors that is, being a jerk to Ilhan Omar. Difficult time dealing with some of the more complicated issues, like stopping people from fighting with ICE so they don't get shot in the streets. That seems problematic. She's a Democrat. She was in the middle of calling for the abolishment of ICE at the moment and calling for Secretary Kristi Noem to resign. What's funny is I think that we have common ground with the left when we look at Kristi Noem and we don't think that she's great. I actually don't think she's been great since the beginning. She's doing this border party routine. All right, I'm going to play you the video of it. This is actually in the CBS website. We'll see how it works on the embedded. There he is. He points at her and he sprays something at her, and then they tackled her, and then they covered it up with some sort of a headline. Thanks a lot, CBS. That was totally useless. Anyway, this is what it looked like. You can see the arcing of the liquid as he flings this little syringe thing with an unknown substance. Here it is again. It's the unknown substance. It's very unknown, people. I don't know why that's so entertaining to me, but when the news wants to point out what they don't know so much, it's kind of comical. Someone in the audience said, whatever that was, it smells so bad. And they urged Omar to go get checked out. But she's so brave, she chose not to. And so she issued a statement telling you and her and all of her supporters exactly how brave she is by going to Twitter, because we live in a serious time when people share their most serious thoughts on Twitter. And she wrote, I'm a survivor, so this small agitator, he's kind of a chubby, big agitator. She's tiny. Okay, I'm a survivor, so this small agitator isn't going to intimidate me from doing my work. I don't let bullies win. Well, you should probably consider that in your country, which is ruled by, I don't know, nothing. It's ruled by chaos. Anyhow, there she is. And this is where I'm pointing out my frustration with the idea of a Somali American. She's the first Somali American elected to Congress. But she's from Somalia. She's a naturalized citizen here. I just don't really want these people in charge of anything. And we have a clip, which is sort of an elegant solution as laid out by Rand Paul about immigrants coming to this nation. And I'll get to that in just a second. It was a Joe Rogan clip. And for all the reasons that I think Rand Paul and Tom Massey are kind of like, they're closest to what I believe in the Senate and the House when it comes to sort of this reasonable position. I think he's actually wrong. But I do want to play it for you. We'll kind of evaluate it based on the merits. All right. So all of those things are all distractions. They're all things that are happening. Shooting, Minnesota. We've got people making themselves victims, potentially even staged. And then you've got the real story. Donald Trump starting to recognize that the online crowd is turning against him. The regular crowd of normal people, the people who might drink out of a mug like this, are concerned about it. They go, look, how about we don't vote for you in the midterms because you're not delivering on those promises? Yesterday, I read you the promises. There were 20 of them. They were called Agenda 47. It's about a mixed bag. And some of them didn't have any time to waste. And the biggest ones were that rigid obedience to the Constitution that I thought the FBI might go back to. They were that defend the Constitution, protect the Second Amendment, go after the Bill of Rights and make sure that our government understands very firmly that there is a leash that's supposed to be there. Let's do a little discussion about the midterms. Quickly, NBC News saying, we've got to win the midterms. That's a Donald Trump quote. He called on MAGA to turn out for the midterm elections. We heard earlier this, maybe 3 weeks ago, Susie Wiles says, in this year, Donald Trump is going to hit the campaign trail. That's what he's best at doing. He's going to rile people up and get them to show up for the midterms. Maybe, likely not, I think. He delivered his first midterm election campaign speech during this new year to a crowd in Iowa, defying historical trends, trying to preserve the Republican majorities. He recited that he considers his signature accomplishments over the past year So he said what they'd done great. Again, I think it's a mixed bag, and said if we lose the midterms, you'll lose so many things that we're talking about, many of the assets that we're talking about, many of the tax cuts that we're talking about. They would lead to very bad things. We've got to win the midterms. I think the real thing is about political survival, because if he doesn't win the midterms, Donald Trump ends up impeached, and then he likely dies in prison. And whether he didn't understand that in the first year, I know it's going to start coming home now. Here he was talking about that a couple weeks back.
But you got to win the midterms, because if we don't win the midterms, it's just going to be, I mean, they'll find a reason to impeach me. I'll get impeached. We don't impeach them. You know why? Because they're meaner than we are. We should have impeached Joe Biden for 100 different things.
They're meaner. That's what we've got. I thought this guy was supposed to go in as a killer. I thought he was going to go in there and gut government. I thought he was going to go out there and get rid of the Department of Education. He was going to return things to the states. He was going to go out there and, aggressively protect civil liberties. We still have a task force on anti-Christian bias that has been unable to turn up all of the people from Jane's Revenge who were burning down churches in 2020 until last year. Like, I'm just saying. It's pretty weak. Marco Rubio is doing the same thing. He's talking about how bad and scary they are. Somehow Marco Rubio is not convincing me here. And then you get to the final pitch, which was on Fox News last night, letting you kind of know they just expect you to forget everything. Maybe you will. I think a lot of voters do. Here's kind of a warm up onto Dems are bad, okay? And if they're in charge, things will be really, really bad. This is the most important election of my life. When you say it for the 15th time in a row, at some point, people are going to stop listening to you. It's the boy who cried wolf situation. Here's Rubio doing that.
No, they would also take over our election system. They pretty much said they want to do that. Val Deming says she also wants the federal government to potentially take over our property insurance, which is, you can just imagine. Maybe that's what the 87,000 IRS agents will do, is run the insurance company. But I mean, the list goes on of the parade of horribles of things they would do. Look, if they were in power, I'm convinced of this now. If they had a filibuster, no filibuster, whatever, and they had been in charge during the COVID, they would have locked down the country. They would have done to the country what they did to New York, what they did to California, what they did to Illinois. That's what they would have done. In fact, Val Demings has said as much, and I think both Demings and Christ are on record as late as I think last summer asking for another shutdown in this state. They would have spent $4-something trillion. They tried to, and even in their infrastructure bill, they brag about only a quarter of that money went to infrastructure. The rest of it went to take on very serious problems like, racist roads and discriminatory trees and whatever else they can think of. And so,
what are we doing here? What are we talking about? This pretending like we still have elections is really bizarre to me, and I don't like it. I don't want to have to pretend like that. What have they done for election integrity? Is that something that can be done at a national level? Seems unlikely. It's all that makes me uncomfortable. In any case, let's focus in on these minor issues and not handle the majors. Let's talk about if you just give us another election, then this time we're serious. For those of us that don't actually believe that we have any choice, if you think that the Republicans could not do something at the state or at the federal level to secure elections, I don't believe them. I don't believe that they have any interest in doing it. And I've had too many people discuss it with me, whether there's hard data behind it or not. And a lot of times it seems like there is. It's just outside of my ability to sort of, it's not even outside of my ability. It's outside of my interest level to go in there. I'll just accept that they're not real, that our elections are defrauded to varying degrees at higher and lesser values, depending on whether you're at the state, the federal, or the local level. So if that's the case, and I do think that's the case, so that's my opinion that it's the case, then we're just doing pretend, and they just want you to come along for the ride. I keep thinking that all of the events that we see, all the news media narrative that's going out there and lying to us on a regular basis, presenting things that are of narrow interest and actually are not national news, but acting like it is, and then getting a bunch of like angry voices. I mean, if you were to take all of the angry, wild people that are completely outraged at the so-called execution of a VA nurse in a state they don't live in, if you were to take all of them, take every single like wild TikTok and all the sort of outrage porn that I see, and there's tons of it, you get all those people, they wouldn't even fill a stadium. They're not even enough to be a voting block in any state. They might be able to run a city election. It's just not that many people. I'm not telling you not to vote. Go out there and pretend. We all have to pretend. we might as well. It's not going to hurt you to vote. But I think that acting like voting our way out of this is going to be a way to happen. This is going to end up in the solution. It's just, I think it's ludicrous. As evidenced by all of our attempts to do it previously. I mean, we could just look at past performance and go, have we voted our way out of it yet? Nope. And if you were to walk it right back and figure out like, hey, when did things really get out of control in this country? Sometime after 2000, we crossed over the $10 trillion in debt. And guess what? Republicans and Democrats have both been in charge, and both of them sucked. They both did the same thing. They both ended up spending my children's future today, devaluing our currency and screwing everything up at a very incredibly fast rate. It took 225 years to get to the point where we had almost $10 trillion in debt. In the last 25 years, in 1/10 of that, we've been able to do 4x that because our money is worthless. I had a long conversation with Mike Adams, Health Ranger, on his channel, and it'll come up in the next couple of days. We did a nice little interview about that. And it's not what I talk about all the time, but it's like something that I have to believe in. It's crazy. All right. If you guys are watching this channel, I would appreciate it if you subscribe. Be part of the conversation. Be part of the discussion. Leave a comment. You can do so on Spotify at KyleSeraphinShow.com. There's a really good comment section there. Same thing over on YouTube and Rumble. I try to read at least all of them from each video on one day on each thing. I may miss your comment, but I do my best to read most of them. I scan through a lot of them. If you guys come in a couple days after the video, I may not see it. But check us out. Rumble, give us a thumbs up. YouTube, you guys are really good about that too. Per capita, I think YouTube crushes Rumble when it comes to, crushes them like Kash Patel crushes violent crime. They do a really good job on that. You guys may hear an ad from our friends at Spotify right now. That's one of the ways we pay the bill. All right. So subscribe, and I would appreciate if you did that. Let's get into the shooting stuff, the 2A, the absolutism. I want to spend the next kind of time talking about how funny it is to see Democrats walking that road. Here we go. CBS News. This is fact-based reporting in theory. 2 federal agents fired their weapons during the Alex Priddy shooting. Government report says to Congress, that's the headline, 2 Customs and Border Patrol agents, CBP. That's interesting to me that they're CBP officers. CBP, generally speaking, is not a patrol type unit. So this may actually tell us a little bit more about what's going on there. If you guys don't know the differential, there's a couple of different groups that work under DHS. Actually, there's a lot of different groups, so let me try to do the ones that I'm aware of. There's ICE, they're 1811s. That means they're federal agents, special agents. They have an investigative role, and they do deportations. They do so under a program called ERO, which sometimes can be its own, badging that you'll see people on, enforcement and removal operations. But as far as I understand it, ERO is not even its own agency. Check me if that's wrong, because that actually may be wrong. And it has historically fallen under ICE as a subdivision, as I recall, but they may have actually created their own thing. Then you've got the green uniform. You guys have all seen that. That's called Border Patrol. Border Patrol are your guys that are the getaways. They're the ones that are policing the non-entry points at the U.S. borders. In a general rule, they're going after folks that have snuck in and they've gone around the places where there's going to be the guys in the blue, which is USCBP. That's Customs Border Protections. All right. So we've kind of got to go this whole list of people that fall under Department of Homeland Security. Then there's some additional investigators called HSI. There's a whole slew of people that are working under this enormous department. And remember, Department of Homeland Security is something like, I think there's something like 10x the size budget-wise compared to something like the FBI. So just so we're on the same page there. All right, we're going to go back into this article. A report was shared with congressional officials by CBP, which said, based on a preliminary view from their Office of Professional Responsibility, that's the federal government's version of saying internal affairs, the most comprehensive official account yet of Priddy's killing, which has triggered widespread outcry amongst both parties. I'm not confident that that widespread outcry is, in fact, 1, grassroots, or 2, actual outcry. But there are people that are crying about it online, so we can say that's true. According to the congressional report, CBP agents were conducting an operation in Minneapolis on Saturday morning when an officer was confronted by 2 female civilians blowing whistles. More on that in a second. They're looking to escalate the whistle thing. And the whistle thing is a real problem. It definitely makes you make bad decisions in the same way if you have a bunch of crying babies and you snap. Every parent out there knows what I'm talking about. The baby just keeps crying and crying and crying. Maybe your toddler keeps crying and crying about things that are not a big deal. Boom, suddenly you lose your mind on it for a second. It actually wears us down. So The whistleblowing is a real problem. They're creating these situations, and I think they're doing it on purpose. Yesterday, we talked about the special forces officer kind of commenting on how they're willing to absorb certain amounts of casualties. And I do believe that they're actually setting these people up for bad outcomes. So there's that. All right, CBP officers pushed them both away. One of the females ran to a male, later identified as 37-year-old Alex Jeffrey Priddy, a U.S. citizen. The CBP officer attempted to move the woman and Priddy out of the roadway. Yeah, he did in a pretty nasty way. There's still a lot more context that I would like to know. The woman and Priddy did not move. The CBP officers deployed OC, which is pepper spray, towards both Priddy and the woman. They attempted to take Priddy into custody. He resisted CBP's efforts. A struggle ensued. During the struggle, a BPA, so I think that's going to be a Border Patrol agent, and that's different than what we're hearing from the other thing here. And let me just make sure that I'm not missing something. A BPA would be a Border Patrol agent, is my understanding. So now you have people that are from a different agency and likely didn't work together. And that also is something we've been speculating about. Priddy resisted CBP's efforts to the struggle ensued. During the struggle, a BPA, Border Patrol agent, yelled, "He's got a gun," multiple times. The report said approximately 5 seconds later, a Border Patrol agent discharged his CBP-issued Glock 19 and a CBP officer discharged his CBP-issued Glock 47. This statement is a freaking mess. A Border Patrol agent had a CBP-issued Glock. That Border Patrol agent little moniker is in parentheses. And it makes me think that CBS News doesn't even know what they're reporting on here. It says a CBP officer also fired a Glock 47. So these are both 9mm handguns. Fine. After the shooting, the BPA, again, Border Patrol agent, I think, advised that he had possession of Priddy's firearm. The Border Patrol agent, subsequently cleared and secured Priddy's firearm in his vehicle. Nothing about a negligent discharge at this point. This is all still preliminary. So all this stuff is kind of funky. The new information differs from the initial accounts that were offered by Homeland Security. That's definitely true, where they said that these were defensive shots. That's not the case, and that was pretty clear from the beginning because the guy doesn't seem to have a weapon in his hand. So this is the problem with going out and making a statement that's very political, which is what Kristi Noem did and some other people did as well. All right. So all that is to say, they're hoping you forget about this. 100% the Trump administration thinks that this is all going to go away. And I'm going to give you the evidence of that. This is a discussion that was happening on Laura Ingraham last night. The only thing that matters is the few months leading up to the midterms and make sure that you have a well-paced and decent-looking economy. And all the snow fights and all the shootings will not impact people. I don't think that's true. But this is a hopium world you could live in if you believe this. I just wanted you guys to at least understand the last little bit about the midterms here.
Wages will rise, the economy will feel strong, and then by June, this is all going to turn around if we have 6 months of really good reporting. That's what makes families feel better. It's always about the economy. The last thing I would just quickly say is 150 million people voted in the presidential election, only 100 million in the midterm congressional. It's vital that President Trump nationalizes this midterm election. This is people's chance to make a down payment on keeping the White House in 2028 and keeping the Trump legacy alive. They've got to show up at the polls in 26 to make that down payment.
Right. Well, let me tell you how it's not going to work. What's not going to work is telling a bunch of people who like guns, who care about civil liberties and our ability to defend ourselves and our ability to speak freely and say whatever it is the hell that we want. You're not going to convince me that saying things like it's illegal to carry at a protest is the way to go. I think this immediately turns off the folks that are on my side of the coin, that are in the independent, conservative aligned, but not Republican camp. And you need people like me to vote. You need people like me to care. And you're not convincing me with the economy is going to look good, so everything's going to be fine. That's not real. You know what's real? Whether or not somebody's going to kick down my door from the ATF. How can we still have an ATF? How about whether or not we're going to see people dragged in the streets and held accountable in 3 years from today when Democrats take back over? If Democrats take back over. They're talking about it. I need a gun now more than ever. And so do you. If you guys don't have guns, and when I say a gun, I mean on my person. Obviously, we have guns. We have lots of guns here. You guys should have guns too. You know what? I'll show you again. I do this sometimes. This is one of those moments where if you're not watching on Spotify, you're missing out. If you're watching on YouTube or Rumble with me right now, look, we don't just have guns. Like, we have weird stuff. We've got pulse fire, exotherm, flamethrowers and stuff. Why? I don't know. Just because if I want to buy one and we can't, then I already have one, so I'm good to go. That's why. I don't think you're going to convince me with this stuff. And the left is out there messaging aggressively right now that we're going to get back in power and we're going to go after these people. And by the way, we think they're Nazis. So one side is trying to go, hey, we should be maybe moderating on this. I'm going to show you the article real quickly. Trump, ABC News, hints at a more relaxed federal tactic in Minnesota after these shootings. He doesn't like the optics. He doesn't like the way it sounds. He's swapped out the guy Bavino, and he's going to put in Tom Homan. I got a bunch of little clips. You guys can make up your own mind based on the things that he said and the things that Tim Walz is saying after those conversations. Okay? He wants to relax it. He wants to do things a little differently. He wants to massage the situation. Does it sound like that's what the political left is doing? No. They're talking about doing Nuremberg trials and hanging people. This is what that sounds like. This is from the Pivot podcast. This is a guy named Scott Galloway talking. He is an NYU professor and something of he's more radical than I am when it comes to the side of the left.
What I'm suggesting is, and again, I've struggled with this my whole life, the difference between being right and being effective. And we're angry, and I get it, protesting is powerful. Promising them that there will be an accountability. And I've said this, I think there should be something equivalent to the Nuremberg trials after this is all over.
I agree.
And to make it clear that once we're back in power, which we will be, this is going to happen. And the statute of limitations on murder is
0.
Never.
Yeah. You know what's funny? A lot of us thought there was going to be those sort of Nuremberg trials that were going to happen because of all the insanity that went down in the COVID regime. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump doing this like celebration of, oh, it's Operation Warp Speed and I'm so great. And look what we did. No, I'm talking about the people that forced it on you or attempted to force it on you, that said you no longer have a position here at this company, that you no longer are allowed to serve in our military, that you're no longer allowed to carry a badge and a gun because you decided that you have some sort of a religious position. And by the way, we're not going to evaluate whether or not your religious position can be accommodated, which is a requirement under Title VII in the federal law. No. We're only interested in whether or not we can force you to do it and you must comply. And some of us decided, no, it's not going to happen. I'm literally in the middle of a lawsuit right now. I don't know if you guys know this, but it's been going on since 2022. We have a what's called mass action. It's not a class action lawsuit against the federal government. And guess who's still fighting it? Pam Bondi's DOJ, Kash Patel's FBI. They fired the guy that did the thing that we allege that the guy did for the reasons that we've alleged that he was a problem. And they've not decided to settle with us. I would love to see them do that. It would be great. If you want to buy a little bit of patience from me while you're doing things, how about you correct wrongs that were done 4 years ago and uprooted and destroyed my family? I just looked at a picture of myself from December of 2022. Is that right? No, December of 2021. I was still working for the FBI. I'd been suspended, but they were allowing me to take leave, so I was still getting a paycheck. I got to tell you guys, I looked way younger. Not that I care so much about my looks. It's just not a thing that I worry about. But I looked at my wife and I went like, holy crap. It's only 4 years ago. Look how young we look. My baby, who's almost 5 years old, he was like this big. He was this tiny little football. And we looked like we were youthful and happy. We were living in this beautiful land of like an inexpensive house with mountains in the background. And my little daughters were running around. We didn't even have my fourth kid yet. My youngest daughter wasn't even thought of. And so when I was talking to my wife last night over dinner, she goes, you know what happened? They stole our youth. That's what they did. They stole like a lot of that youthful enthusiasm. I'll tell you what the COVID crisis did for those of us that were involved in it, that worked for the government. They stole our ability to have any trust or faith whatsoever in our government. That's a real serious thing to steal from a veteran or from a public servant who actually has the right attitude about it. And I always said I was the right guy to work for the government. Like, here's the thing. I freaking hate the government. I've always hated the government. I don't like rules that much. I'm willing to go out there and comply with them in so much as they make sense and we can do it in a way that aligns with the overarching principles like the Bill of Rights. But doggone it, I freaking hate the government. I've always hated the government. So I'm the right guy to be there because I don't want government authority. I never lost the mindset that when I worked for the government, one day I would no longer work for the government. That's what needs to happen. It needs to be people that work in these jobs that understand at some point you're going to be subject to whatever it is that you're doing out there. Are you living in a world? Are you creating the world? Are you operating in the world in a way that you would like operate back? Oh, guess what? That's a Christian principle, isn't it? The golden rule. Do unto others, right? I've got freaking Berenstein Bears books about it for my children to learn about this. Ain't that something? Huh. I wish these people were serious the way that the left is serious talking about Nuremberg and the COVID accountability. That didn't happen. It just didn't. This is Larry Krasner. You guys remember him? He's the Soros-backed elected DA in Philadelphia. Interestingly enough, under Biden, he was not even that radical because he didn't even go after guys like Mark Houck, who was, accused of assault, and they denied the charges. They ended up not pressing charges. The DOJ did. And that's to tell you, the feds are much more radical when it comes to pushing leftism than the people in the local area. But here he is calling everybody at ICE a Nazi. This is the talking point that I'm seeing marched out. Obviously, if you're going to go out there and comply with federal law, hold on, we had a meme about this, didn't we? Here it is. ICE enforces laws passed by Congress. The end. You got a problem with it? Go after Congress. That seems totally reasonable. Here's DA Krasner saying they're going to hunt down, quote unquote, Nazis, modern day Nazis. How crazy do you have to be to believe this stuff? And they're going out there and people are cheering.
This is a small bunch of wannabe Nazis. That's what they are. In a country of 350 million, we outnumber them. If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find your identities. We will find you. We will achieve justice.
All right, I would argue that that's a hard leftist type position. So CNN kind of bills themselves as a center left news outlet, whatever you like. They're not as extreme on the left as MS Now or any other things that are doing that. They're not as far to the left as some of the others that I deal with. By the way, I can actually have conversations with those people, amusingly enough. Never talked to anybody at CNN for some reason. Maybe because I won't do this kind of ridiculous drama. This woman, Tiffany Cross, is apparently an author. I have no idea what other credentials she has to evaluate the news, but she's sitting there. She's a presentable face, and she's making the argument that the people that are rounding up illegal aliens, many of whom in the CBP and the Border Patrol world, in my experience, are Hispanic. They're first-generation Americans and second-generation Americans. They still speak Spanish because that's part of their culture, and they actually turn around and they love America something fierce. That's been my personal experience with it. And like, what do I know? I've worked with some Border Patrol guys. I've investigated assault on Border Patrol agents and officers. I used to live next door to one. I bought a home from a Border Patrol officer, an agent rather. So what the hell do I know? Apparently they were all Nazis. Little did I know. Little did I know they were all white supremacists and some sort of freakish militia. This is some radical stuff that's going out there. This is actually more likely to stand for the midterms than the idea that the economy feels good. Only because people are emotional and they vote dumb.
Children who have been kidnapped.
Did you just say ICE officers are militia?
Yes, have you not been paying attention?
Yeah, I think
certainly
you're
mirror
stretching it a
the
little
Gestapo.
bit. You know, that's very.
I don't think I'm stretching anything. I think we have seen what we have not seen. What we have not seen are gang members committing violence. What we have seen are ICE agents
hold on one second.
kill people.
But Tiffany, you're saying that you're just making a supposition here. There's no concrete evidence.
You got to be careful. That's way
there was some support.
There was some men and women serving the government.
We have seen white supremacist tattoos.
Risking their lives, serving the government.
Risking their lives, they're taking lives,
You're calling them Proud Boy militia. Did you say that?
Well, I did not call them Proud Boy militia, but I think it's disgraceful that you're sitting here. I'm actually not. But I think that there are white supremacist tattoos on their
white supremacist federal officers.
Yeah, white supremacist federal officers.
Like, where are you going with this? Why would you say that?
I'm going with my eyes, ears, and logic. There have been multiple ICE agents who have white supremacist
men and women working for the federal government, risking their lives, carrying out a mandate, and they're white supremacists?
Yes, and you remember.
Listen, if you can establish that they're white supremacists, then there's no reason that you should ever comply with them, because that's an objectively bad thing to be, they say. A white supremacist, someone who thinks that someone who is not of the same skin tone, roughly, that I am, that they have no business being in this nation, that they don't even deserve to live, whatever supremacy means to them. Here's the problem. I've investigated white supremacists. I've been on teams that were doing investigations into them. I've sat there and watched alleged white supremacists under the Biden administration. And probably under the Trump administration, too. I'm trying to think. 2018, yeah, that would have been Trump time. 2019, 2020, 2021. Yeah, we watched so-called white supremacists under the previous administration when Donald Trump was in the first time. They look like a retarded 22-year-old, khaki-wearing, boat shoe-shod polo shirt tucked in, latte buyer at Starbucks that's tweeting racist crap on Reddit because he's probably shit posting, which is an actual term for people who are doing a trolling to get other people upset because that gets him off. I don't know. The whole idea that there's someone that is out there, there are certainly some people that are racist in this world. That would be silly to deny, but they are certainly not the threat that the left would have us try to believe. So in 2026, you're going to have me believe that there are a bunch of actual card-carrying National Socialist Party members, and they are all members of law enforcement at the federal level, despite the background checks and the top secret clearance they have to get. And those top secret clearances are being adjudicated by people that have been in the federal government that are basically true believers in the government. Really? That's the claim? It's a hell of a move. But post-millennial, this is Andy No's outfit. I think this article was written by somebody else. Why do I not see who wrote it? This might be Libby Emmons writing this. It says, Jacob Frey, the mayor of Somalia, he will not comply with federal immigration law after they met with Tom Homan. Okay, so Trump said he was going to soften his take on it. They were going to do something slightly different. So let's get into that. Let's find out, how does it look? What's the turn? What does Donald Trump have to say about all this? This is what he said about softening, changing, or moving pieces around on the chessboard.
Is this a pullback?
I don't think it's a pullback. It's a little bit of a change. Everybody in this room that has a business, you make little changes. Bovino's very good, but he's a pretty out there kind of a guy. And in some cases, that's good. Maybe it wasn't good here. But you have to understand, when I watch some of the people that I've been watching over the last few weeks, these are paid insurrectionists. These are paid agitators. These people aren't normal, like OG, that, they're incensed about anything. How do you get incensed when you go into a state and you're taking criminals out? You're taking monsters out, murderers. We had 11,888 murderers let into our country by other countries, by Biden with his open border stupid policy. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. You talk about bad policy. Open borders where people were coming, so the whole world, the Congo, Venezuela, all over the world, they're letting people in from their prisons and they're feeding them into the United States. And they're murderers and they're drug dealers and they're everything else you can think of, every bad name you can think of. And they let them in by the millions. We closed the border. We have nobody coming into our country anymore.
Okay, great. I mean, that's great. That was part one. And then you got to deport all the people that came here, right? The answer is not softening or doing a change of tactics. The answer is you don't get to decide what goes on. This is the federal government. The federal government's job, one of the few things that we can 100% mandate, that we can actually say falls under the charter, passed by Congress. These are laws that must be enforced. If you got a problem with it, get together with your congressional representative, vote them out in the midterms if you want. But the laws are the laws. My job as president is to execute those laws, and I will do so. And we're going to get all these people out. That would be the right answer, I think. There's no reason to back down on this stuff. Because when you do, you get narrative victories, like people like Tim Walz go out there. Here he is saying one thing. I'm going to show you kind of evolution. Depending on how radical the group is that he's talking to, that's how left-leaning he's going to be when he says it. Here he is on CNN. This is Tim Walz after the meeting with Tom Homan. And he has some nice things to say about Tom Homan, but not for long.
First of all, the meeting with Tom Homan, how did that go? What are your thoughts on it?
Well, Tom Homan's a professional, which is a lot more than Bovino and Kristi Noem. But look, I think the thing we said is we're very clear about this, that we need these folks out of Minnesota, and we need justice for Renee Good and for Alex, and those were things that we came with. I think the thing that I'm most concerned about is the tone was different. There was a tone shift. I wish it was because of the horrific shooting that somebody saw some morality, but I think it's probably the press. But with that being said, I'm not interested in a more efficient metro surge. I'm ready for them to get out of here, and I think that's where Minnesotans are talking about. So
it's not your choice. Again, what did he just say? We don't want it done more efficiently. We don't want it done more humanely. We don't want it done more correctly or more professionally. We want you out. So that's not an option. That shouldn't be an option. You don't negotiate with terrorists. And it doesn't mean that they're all terrorists. I'm just saying that's the mentality that the United States used to have. The federal government doesn't have to pussyfoot around with requirements under federal law, and that's the mandate of this agency. That's what it does. It's not just people on the left that sound like Donald Trump has sort of ceded some ground. This is Nick Sorter, who a lot of people have been watching, cover this on the ground. He's talking to Steven Crowder here, so a little clip about them saying that people at Border Patrol, and for some reason he's wearing the green Border Patrol hat. Somebody must have given him a hat. He's wearing that, and he's saying that Border Patrol agents on the ground in Minneapolis are feeling like they're being betrayed. And I think they probably are.
One of the stories that I've unfortunately been hearing this morning is that Border Patrol agents have now been given new orders not to, for example, if they were to run a license plate and it comes back as that person is an illegal that Border Patrol was forced to let into the country under Joe Biden, they are no longer allowed to arrest that person.
And is this
even
the first
though they know for a fact that's illegal?
Is this new information that you're just bringing to light right now, that these new orders? Okay. And I don't want you to reveal your sources, but you have someone who you trust on this. You believe this is a matter of actual approach and policy now.
This actually came from two separate Border Patrol agents on the ground in Minnesota. They're very, very frustrated. Obviously, they feel like one of them actually said that this feels like we just reverted to the Biden days.
That's really telling to me. I think it's really telling. It should be kind of telling to you too. If the left is saying that they're in a good spot, and I'll show you some of the more radical versions of Tim Walz saying it after that. He was a little bit more measured when he was on CNN. But they're telling you, we're not willing to accept the federal government doing the job of the federal government in a place where they are required legally to do the job of the federal government. That's what they said. So whether you want to call that an insurrection, whether you want to say that the Insurrection Act is necessary, you can't not do this. In law enforcement, we talk about 3 levels of offerings. Number 1 is we ask you nicely. The next one is we tell you aggressively. The third is that we physically make you do it. Is that always the way that things have to go down? Sometimes there's a little bit of latitude there. But the more softness you show, you have the potential of making these people mistake kindness and mercy and understanding for fellow citizens. Kindness for weakness is a big problem. Those of you who've been in the military know exactly what I'm talking about. When you had someone that ruled, that was a NCO that came in incredibly aggressively and ruled with kind of a really rough hand, you never wanted to mistake kindness for weakness when they gave you sort of some option. If you started misbehaving right then, or your unit stopped following protocol, they could get the wrong lesson from it. And it seems like they're actually taking the wrong lesson away with what Donald Trump is saying. Guys, you may hear a Spotify ad right now. I'd like to warn you. KyleSeraphinShow.com is how you get to Spotify. It's a hyperlink that gets you right there. It's a cheat code that will get you into our Spotify. If you're listening and not watching, you're missing out on some of the visuals, so you might want to do that. So check that out. You can also support us on locals at KyleSeraphin.com. That's where we have a paid subscriber base. Otherwise, if you're on Rumble, if you're on YouTube, give us a like. Make sure you subscribed if you have not already. Yes, I mentioned it because every single day I do that, then some more of you realize that you're not subscribed. Double check and make sure you're actually still subscribed. That'd be great. We're going to get to 20,000 in the next week or so, and maybe 3 weeks. I love watching you guys jump onto this channel and giving us an alternative place to stream, which is really appreciated. And you guys are doing great stuff by adding to sort of our reach. I'd like people to be reasonable. I'd like people to have reasonable conversations about things. I'm watching our chat saying they're making fun of me for saying CNN is center. No, I don't think they're center. I think they're left, but they present themselves as center left. And I don't think they are. I think they're actually a little bit more wild. What's funny is that politicians also treat them as center left, because when they get a chance to go something further left, they do this. This is Tim Walz talking to Tim Miller over at Bulwark, who Tim seems like a nice enough guy. I guess he used to be a Republican, but at the same time, he's a Republican because he's a 90s Democrat, as far as I can tell. All right, here they are talking about this situation with Homan.
I would beat the shit out of him now if I could, and I would call that.
Hold on, let me go back. That is not him talking about Homan. That's him talking about J.D. Vance. And this is a cut that's been taken out of context where they're saying that Tim Walz wants to physically beat up. I wanted to do this because I wanted to point out some of the lies that happen on both sides. This cut acts like Tim Walz is saying he wants to physically fight J.D. Vance. He's talking about the fact that he believes his arguments would, quote unquote, beat the shit out of J.D. Vance's arguments.
The shit out of him now, if I could, and I would call that out. I mean, that's just different. In verbally going at it, my argument is much better. In making the case that housing prices are up because of immigration and that we should build on federal lands, it was such a crazy thing. But then when I watched him, I got sucked into that. And if you remember, this was right in that moment of eating dogs and cats. I took that bait and thought that was the argument of how outrageous it was. That was not the argument.
And he said that your cops are liars. He said that the ICE agents aren't.
They all did. That's exactly right. That this is the problem with them. And well, the president said it, that we told them to stand down. Do you think they would do that? Do you think that police would not protect citizens no matter if I'm like, oh, don't do this?
Yes.
Yes.
No.
Well, this is the whole paradox with these guys.
No, we think that they would not protect citizens because they're not protecting citizens. It's really obvious when you look at it. You can see that they actually withdrew from places when they should have actually been surging in and stopping people from destroying a hotel or whatever else. So this is the clip about Homan. Sorry, I had them mixed up here. These are the guys from, I think, the Midas Touch. It's either that or Pod Save America. I can't always get them all straight, but here we go. This is Homan discussion from Tim Waltz. Again, depending on where he talks, he's willing to say things a little bit more aggressively.
So you met with Tom Homan today. Did Tom Homan acknowledge the ways in which there had been overreach, the ways in which their tactics and their tenor has been counterproductive?
Said it's not the way to do it.
He did.
I think that was his words. He said, this is not the way to do this. And I think what he acknowledged is, and look, I don't agree with Tom Homan's philosophy on things, but I do understand that he is law enforcement and he understands right from wrong. And he knows, I mean, no matter how much they were trying to gaslight us, the layman on the street said, I don't really think it's good policing to run around and throw canisters and kick people down and think that's probably not a good idea. He acknowledged that and said something has to change. And then I think what he acknowledged, what we've been saying all along, is they're spreading lies about this. I said, Tom, you got the president believing that you have 14,000 people you had here. And he goes, what? I said, yeah, you didn't arrest 14,000 people. His people are kind of like stammering along and stuff. And he at least acknowledged, look, we got to deal with real numbers. And I said, you said we have 1,400 people in our prisons that are here undocumented. We have 8,000 total people in our prisons. 207 are serving sentences. And they should serve their Minnesota sentences. And what we do is we give them over to you. So talking to him, at least he was grounded in the reality of what the numbers look.
You see what happens when you let someone like Kristi Noem come out and say that this person was a terrorist and you give false, details, then you give this guy a chance to be able to act like he's being reasonable. And he really is thinking that he's being reasonable. It's not a good scenario. That's actually the worst case scenario, is that you give them an opportunity to present like they are the reasonable, because you're going to end up converting a bunch of other wild people out there. And I keep seeing it. All right, I want to go back to the argument about the Second Amendment, because it matters. It matters what the president says about his job as the chief executive in this country. The executive agencies are the ones that are going to violate your Bill of Rights. Your Bill of Rights are not restrictions on you. The Bill of Rights they're negative rights. They say that the government is not allowed to come in and touch those rights that pre-exist. They only exist if you continue to exercise them, by the way. This is him talking about guns. There's a clip that made a viral round from Fox News talking about an absolutist. Donald Trump is not even like a Second Amendment defender, as far as I can tell. He's claimed that he owned a gun. I don't know that he's ever shot very many. His son, Don Jr., seems like he's a shooter. Well, how he's not getting through to dad? They're all kind of like this like New Yorker types. If you live with a lot of money, you don't realize the real struggle. But here he is. He's making, let me give credit where it's due. As you listen to this clip of Donald Trump, let's give him points for calling it a magazine and not a clip. That's pretty good. Let's also take away points, because whenever you start talking about a gun that is quote unquote fully loaded, that's how you tell me you're not a gun owner. I have no idea what a fully loaded fill in the blank gun is. It's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's the number one way that I call out people who have no idea what they're talking about when it comes to guns. Fully loaded. What do you mean? Like the magazine's topped off and there's +1 in the chamber? Are you going to talk about, that's what, a condition 0 gun is fully loaded? They always do this stuff. It's very silly. But anyway, here he is kind of giving you kind of a heads up on where he stands with the gun thing.
Listen, the entire country is talking about what happened this past weekend in Minnesota. You've already spoken about it. Everyone watching has seen the video. Everyone has an opinion. I'm curious what you thought when you first saw that video.
Well, I think the whole thing is terrible. I don't like the fact that he was carrying a gun that was fully loaded and he had 2 magazines with him, and it's pretty unusual. But nobody knows when they saw the gun, how they saw the gun, everything else. Bottom line, it was terrible. Both of them were terrible. The other...
That's true. They were terrible. I don't like it when people say otherwise. I think that if you're out there claiming that it was not terrible, that's pretty gross. That's a pretty awful thing for you to have said. It turns out there actually was someone who was saying that they were not terrible. Let me just play you something that I think is the opposite of valuable in commentary. This is Megyn Kelly. Anytime I have a chance to say that some of these people are out there chasing audience and doing grifty stuff, I will. Donald Trump is at least acknowledging the humanity and the human position that it's sad that someone was killed. And it very well may be unjustified. We haven't read all the reports. We haven't seen all the information out there. There's plenty of information that is still required. And I'm going to give you some context on that because, again, if this guy was previously known and known to do something else, training and experience, your experience with a person can actually weigh in on the shooting, it turns out. So here we go. Long and short, this is the opposite of what I think is helpful or valuable. This is the same thing that Dan Bongino and Julie Kelly were doing at the end of the campaign, where they were claiming the FBI was going to, kill Donald Trump because they had deadly force authorized. This is that same mentality that's like right wing no matter what, or GOP has to win because that's my team. That's the gross part.
I know I'm supposed to feel sorry for Alex Preddy, but I don't. I don't. Do you know why I wasn't shot by Border Patrol this weekend? Because I kept my ass inside and out of their operations. It's very simple. If I felt strongly enough about something the government was doing that I would go out and protest, I would do it peacefully on the sidewalk without interfering, via a whistle, via shouting, via my body, via any other way. I would make my objections known by standing there without interfering, because interfering is where you go south. And laying hands on a police officer trying to, or Border Patrol officer or ICE officer trying to conduct a law enforcement operation is a felony. And now you are going to get arrested. And if you do anything that resembles resisting, you're in serious trouble. This
is the same woman that was out there cheering on trans kids and hoping that people would be much more accepting of their transition as their parents like chemically sterilize them. So spare me your bullshit that you have like some sort of principled position. This is the stuff that I really hate seeing on the political right. This is why I played that piece from JP Sears the other day, showing that basically it's like, what's the wind doing? Oh, okay, we're all mad because he was protesting with a gun. We're going to do this. It's illegal to carry. This is the MAGA talking point going out right now. I despise it. I despise the fact that you think that you have to go out there and mirror this. How about some freaking principles? It's still sad that a person got killed. I would like him not to have been killed. It actually works badly for your movement. It looks really, really bad when someone gets shot and it's not an obvious thing that he was doing something that was illegal at the time. Yeah, he's obstructing, but to what degree? As far as I could tell, his touching would not have actually constituted an assault on a federal officer case that anybody would have taken. How do I know? I've investigated those cases. You can have legitimate assault on federal agents and they still don't take it. There was no serious bodily damage done to this guy. You bump into somebody or you chest bump them. Is it technically speaking a crime? Sure. Does it actually result in the fact that you're going to go to prison for it? Absolutely not. You guys understand that there's a spectrum of whether or not they're actually even going to prosecute it. Just like you can have a federal crime of theft, or you can steal something or defraud people and you're still not going to be prosecuted by the federal agents. I do not like people going out there and chasing audience with their tough talk bullshit, because that's bullshit. At the end of the day, can you not have some humanity and look and go, look, it's really sad that that woman made a very terrible decision and hit the gas. Whether she panicked, whether she did it intentionally, I have no idea. It's still awful that she died, that her son is growing up without a mom. How radical is that guy going to be? Federal agents killed my mom. This is the way you make terrorists in like other countries, by the way. So you can look at it as a human being and go, this is not good. You can look at it and say, the guy was a nurse. He may have been an asshole. He may have been a total like incel, leftist, Antifa, violent maniac, but we don't have all that information. And she sure is not making that information like aware. We're not aware of that. We do know that he was involved in some previous altercations with ICE. So maybe there's some context, but a human being dying is not something you celebrate. I hate the FAFO people. If you've never taken a life, if you've never had somebody die in your hands, then maybe just keep it to yourself with your tough guy talk, especially like the women who are in their 50s. That have never been near anything violent or confusing, because it's freaking confusing when you're involved in a fight on the street. Let's call it that. Here's some context. Let's have some context from CNN.
CNN is learning that Alex Preddy had a physical encounter with federal agents about a week before he was shot and killed by law enforcement. Sources tell CNN that Preddy broke a rib when a group of federal officers tackled him while he was protesting. Priscilla Alvarez is breaking that story for us. What else are you hearing, Priscilla?
Dana, we're learning more details along with my colleague Jeff Winter about what exactly transpired a week before Alex Preddy was shot in Minneapolis and died this past weekend. Now, in this earlier incident, he stopped his car after observing ICE agents chasing what he described as a family on foot and began shouting and blowing his whistle. Preddy later told one of these sources that 5 agents tackled him him, and one leaned on his back, appearing to leave him with a broken rib. According to this source, and I'm quoting here, that source said, quote, "That day he thought he was going to die." Now, Preddy was later given medication that is consistent with treating a broken rib, according to records reviewed by CNN. Sources also say that he was known to federal law enforcement, though it's unclear whether it was this incident or another with federal agents that they knew of him. It's also unclear whether the officers who tackled him on Saturday knew who he was. What we do know, however, is that federal immigration officers have been collecting personal information of protesters and agitators within the context of what the Department of Homeland Security has warned is repeated threats towards officers as they are conducting immigration enforcement operations. In fact, just Tuesday, the department also publicized an online tip form to share information about people allegedly harassing ICE officers. We've also heard Tom Homan, the White House border czar, say that a database would be created for those who are arrested for impeding law enforcement. But thus far, in our queries to the Department of Homeland Security, they have said that no such database exists.
All right, all that is good context. So something more was going on here, most likely. We don't know all the facts on it. I don't have to have an opinion on it definitively. I can look at the initial stuff, and I don't have to be a jerk about somebody dying. And at the end of the day, I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, so I still think you should be able to carry a gun. That's really important to me. That's not necessarily the position of the president. I told you earlier, he says dumb things about guns because he's a New York liberal. That's where he came from in the 90s. Doesn't make him a bad person. It just means that's who he is. Doesn't mean you can't get along with him. Doesn't mean you can't love him as a person. Doesn't mean you can't vote for him or whatever. But pretending he's something he's not is dumb. And Second Amendment absolutism means something. It means without caveat.
Sir, was Mr. Preddy acting as an assassin? Do you think he was acting as an assassin in Minneapolis?
Who is that?
Mr. Preddy, your deputy chief of staff said that. You don't think so?
With that being said, you can't have guns. You can't walk in with guns.
What about the Second Amendment?
Listen, you can't walk in with guns. You can't do that. But it's just a very unfortunate incident.
Yeah, you're making people on the left ask about the Second Amendment. It's not because they're honest or they're genuine or they think that that shall not be infringed means something. No, these people oftentimes will hate guns. They don't own guns. They're going to say things that are totally audience chasing, just as bad as Megyn Kelly's tough guy bullshit. You can't walk in with guns. You can't have guns. You're the president of the United States. When you say things anywhere, people jot it down. They videotape it, and then they play it everywhere. There was context there. It was context. And the context was exactly what it sounded like. He said you can't go to a protest with a gun like that. That's not true. This made the rounds on Fox like it was some sort of a big win. I want you to listen to what Joey Jones says here. He says, I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist. I get that. You're allowed to not be an absolutist. Everyone's acting like he said that he was an absolutist. Listen for it. It's like a stumble step. And then he goes on and lists all these conditions. If you're an absolutist like me, those conditions are all crap. Doesn't mean you don't have responsibility. It just means the state can't put them on you. But listen to what he says, because there is a position that people are acting like they espouse, but it somehow has limits. That's not absolutism. And I only want people that are advocating on my behalf that are actual absolutists. The guys at GOA are closer to that. Gun Owners of America. And I did spend time with them over the weekend, or over the last week. So that's why I'm kind of bringing it up. Okay, Joey Jones, Fox, here's what he says.
Because I've been in that situation. There's a couple of things. Number one, the Second Amendment is a right. I'm not a Second Amendment absolutist.
I'm not.
You have the right to carry a weapon to defend yourself, not the privilege. It is a right. Those rights come with restrictions. I think you would understand that more than anyone at this table. One of those restrictions is you have to have your ID and your permit on you. We don't know. Current reports are he didn't have either one of those on, at which point he's not carrying legally.
Let's just stop for a second. By the way, if you are carrying a permit or not carrying a permit, that's not something the law enforcement officer knows about you at that moment. It's also a misdemeanor offense in most places. It ends up either as being trespassing or maybe a misdemeanor ticketed offense, especially in Minnesota, where if you can produce the fact that you did, in fact, have a lawful permit, you just weren't carrying it, that will be dismissed. Let's be real. Rights don't actually have restrictions. That's why they're not a right under the state law. They're a right under federal. which means the federal agents who are the ones enforcing it, they don't have any, that's no purview of theirs.
But number two, even beyond that, with the right to carry a firearm comes the responsibility to do it correctly and to do it with foresight and to do it understanding the situation you're walking into and what could happen once you get there. Just about every state offers a class on that. And if you carry a firearm, you should take that class. And if your state charges you for it, you should go protest for that class to be taxpayer funded because.
Can we just stop for that for a second too? Can we agree that Republicans, and it sounds like Joey Jones is a Republican from the stuff he's saying right here, Republicans always want to solve the problem of government with government. Why? Why does a taxpayer need to fund your class for your thing? If you want to learn something, go freaking learn it. I don't even think they should be paying for public schools because they don't seem to give us a good thing. I'd rather we all put our own money towards this thing and pool our money to get what we want. You should have the government pay for a class so you can learn how to carry responsibly and not act like a dipshit? That's bizarre.
It is a right. So that's important. We can talk about policy all day long. There's only one person in this world that could have absolutely prevented Alex Pretty from getting shot that day, and it's Alex Pretty. That doesn't mean I think he should have been shot. I don't think it was necessary whatsoever to shoot Alex Pretty to save a life. But I get to watch that incident from behind Alex Pretty, not as one of the arresting officers and not as potentially the person that I believe from looking at the video did shoot him.
That's actually the most critical thing. I wish they would hone in on the good stuff. That's the soundbite. If you weren't the officer who saw what the officer saw, who knew what the officer knew, who had the experience and the training that the officer had, then you don't get to really decide one way or another whether it's justified. And I don't either. And I'm not trying to be mean, and I'm not trying to devalue anyone else's opinion. All I'm telling you is if you did not do that, that's the legal standard for justification. You can still think it's awful, and it's still going to be a narrative victory for the left. They can't help but have narrative victory. And now you're making these like weird squishes on Fox News call out what the right should have been doing in the first place, which is saying, let's have some freaking consistency. Please. How many people celebrated Kyle Rittenhouse? I did. I think he did the right thing. I don't think he probably should have been there, but he brought a gun and he was allowed to have it, and he shot someone and saved his own life. Fair play. America. You should also be able to show up at something. You shouldn't fight with cops. So maybe there's more to it than that. And again, we'll find out. The CNN report indicates maybe. But why is Trey Gowdy the one that has to be the voice of sensibility? Again, I can always agree with people who say sensible things, even if I don't like what they're saying generally.
And I think what frustrates people, you remember Kyle Rittenhouse and how he was made a hero on the right. I am sure there are people on the conservative side who are saying, wait a minute, you mean you can't take a firearm to a protest because you were just celebrating the guy for doing it a couple of years ago? Alex Pretty's firearm was lawfully being carried. It's lawful to carry a gun in Minnesota. He never brandished it. He didn't point it at the cops. And we certainly should not be labeling him as being a domestic terrorist who was going to execute cops. There's no evidence to support that. And I think
that's the worst. This narrative control is so bad. This is not a smart way to handle it. Again, you're opening the door up for the people that have a lot of sensitivity. They have a lot of feelings. You're opening the door up for the actual snake in the grass communists. And I'm seeing it happen here in Texas. I played you one yesterday. It's the NASA astronaut and the F-16 driver. What did he say? Oh, I'm talking to the MAGA people. Like, you don't have to support this. How about this guy who's he's the slimiest dude in Texas right now. James Tallarico. I see his signs up. He's running for office in my area. Constantly saying this. And what does he say? The communist buzzword. Neighbor. Neighbor, which equals comrade. They're calling everybody else a Nazi and a fascist. Who does that? Communists. And this is not a new tactic. This is a tactic that's 80 years old. I'll play you that in one more second to remind you. But every time you hear somebody use the word neighbor, your hackles should go up in this current news cycle. Listen.
Alex Pretty died as he lived, protecting his neighbors. Alex devoted his life to caring for our American veterans, nursing them back to health in the local VA. And in his final moments, Alex stood between a masked man and his neighbor, risking his life to protect hers. That is what real courage looks like.
That is how you take Christian language and you turn it into secular, godless communism. That's what they do. And he's very good at it, by the way. He's better than anybody. He's Barack Obama level talent when it comes to that, because people are sitting there going, I'm the good person. I believe what James Tallarico is saying, and that makes me on the moral high ground. And you can't have that moral high ground because I have it, because I believe that about myself. This alignment of you work with veterans and therefore you get, I don't know, like honor adjacent. There's plenty of dirtbags who are veterans. Everybody who's served in the service knows that. Like, you got friends who served with you and they're complete scumbags. That's fine. The idea that you're a nurse and you worked with them makes you special, and that you honored and took care of your neighbor, real scary stuff, because there's plenty of people that buy it. They think that the people that are out there doing the work of the federal government, that are actually doing what? Enforcing the laws passed by Congress. I'm showing the meme on the screen if you guys are just listening. They're Nazis. There's plenty of evidence of people saying that. I want to show you this lady too. She thinks that we should let people know that there are Nazis coming. It's 100% a violation of almost every single municipality to go out there and do the whistles, do the bullhorns, and to violate and break the peace. Imagine someone start doing this. I actually kind of want one of these things now that I saw this, by the way, because I am a gear guy and I do like gear, and this looks like it'd be fun to have. I don't even know why I need it. I need earplugs on, but like, should we have air raid sirens to let people know that ICE is coming because they're Nazis? That's all this woman did was convince me that I need an air raid siren, but not for any of the reasons she said. But it does freak me out, because if you went out there and executed this thing in public, you should be arrested for disturbing the peace, because state laws still should apply.
So I've been seeing a lot of videos on TikTok of people using whistles to alert their neighbors that ICE is coming. And I think that's a really good system. And I think we're kind of sleeping on something that might even produce a better result for warning people over long distances that ICE is coming.
I'm not sure that this is a woman, by the way.
Portable air raid siren. It does not require electricity. It is compact for the amount of sound it makes. It's relatively cheap.
Is this a dude? The chat is saying it's a dude too. The worst thing that has happened in the transgender movement and all that kind of stuff, the worst thing that has happened is that somewhat homely or somewhat masculine looking women are now assumed to be dudes until proven otherwise. That was not the case in my whole life. What a sad moment that we've arrived in, where you have to roll up and do like the Crocodile Dundee, like undercarriage grab to decide whether or not someone who has a slightly reedy voice, maybe she was yelling all day, has a masculine presentation because they have stronger shoulders, or maybe they were an athlete, or maybe they're just really homely or unfortunate looking, as my sister used to say. It's so sad that in 2026, the general assumption is that women who might not fit perfect femininity are immediately assumed to be dudes, and there's a decent possibility that that's the case. I actually really don't like that. I really don't like that for her or for him or whatever the hell's going on here. All right, air raid siren inbound. Turn your volumes down. I'm going to try to save you from it.
I got this for $27 on Amazon, and it makes a really loud sound. You can already start to hear it. I'm going to unfold
get that handle. I want this thing.
All I have to do is just take these handles out.
Okay, let's go.
Push this button down.
Do it. I'm turning it down because it's way too strong. Yeah, that thing looks super fun.
Loud as hell. You can hear this thing from far, far away, and it's the universal sound of the Nazis are coming.
The Nazis are coming.
Scary as hell. I think this is a good option.
Okay, you lost me at the femininity thing when you said it's loud as hell and it's scary as hell. I don't know a lot of women that speak like that with that intonation. I think that's a man. That's just my official opinion at this point after listening. Also, I want an air raid siren. I think that would be fun. I don't know why I would need it, but it does seem like it'd be kind of fun to have one. And I like gear, so that seems like something I could find a use for. If nothing else, I would give it to my child. Apparently, there's $27 air raid sirens out there. There's $27 air raid sirens out there on Amazon. So there you go. You guys don't have to send me one. Look at this. Our chat is nuts. If you guys have never joined our live show, you're missing out. We start at 09:30 Eastern time. We run it at 8:30 here in Texas. You can give us a like and view over on Rumble. You can do it on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel. There's all that. Also, you weirdos want to send me stuff, which I think is really funny and amusing. And then occasionally you guys actually do that. Like you actually send stuff. We have a P.O. box. I think I actually have the P.O. box here. Should I put the P.O. box on the screen? I never do that. There's the P.O. box and the timer, which we don't need. There's the P.O. Box. It's 9073 West State Highway 29, Suite 110, Box 509, Liberty Hill, Texas, 78642. Some of you guys know this anyway. Our chat moderator, Rose, puts it out all the time. And so does Rick over on YouTube. But you don't need to send me that, by the way. I will probably just buy my own. That seems like a thing I would do. But notice how she said, the Nazis are coming. It's this whole Nazi thing. It's getting people kind of whacked out. It's getting people moved to the point where they think they're the good guy in some sort of struggle between good and evil. Listen to this woman. She just got fired from her job at the Hilton. Now she's going to be a freaking unemployed hippie. Just what we need. Why? Because she wanted to out who was staying at the hotel that may or may not be ICE and thought that that was protected speech. Listen, it's protected that you can say it. There's still going to be consequences. Just in the same way that if you do something dumb with a gun, there may be consequences. I'm open to the idea that there was a justifiable shooting of Alex Preddy. I just don't have all the information yet, and I don't think you do either. I know this woman got fired because she was acting like a dummy at her job. That seems like a no-brainer. Check this.
Hello, my name is Gia, and I was fired by the Hilton Anatole for speaking out against ICE.
Warned y'all that there are ICE agents staying at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas.
I did in the morning see the video of an ICE agent taking the life of a U.S. citizen, Renee Nicole Good. Rest in peace to her. So that video was on my mind fresh in the morning, and I noticed these men with guns on their hips and their badges, and they had earpieces, and I was just kind of confused, like, who are they?
Let's just be really clear. She saw that somebody got shot in Minneapolis on the news, and she was in Dallas, and she was like, what if I could make this about me? And her name is Gia. And Gia said, I'm going to make a TikTok about ICE people at my hotel. And now I'd like to do a GoFundMe because I lost my money because I don't have a job anymore. And now I'm like the Big Lebowski. I'm a jobless dude.
On my lunch break, I posted a video notifying my community that ICE agents were staying at the Hilton Anatole in Dallas, Texas. I guess the ICE agent reported to the front desk that he felt concerned for his safety, and they had guns, so I couldn't understand why he would feel that a concern for his safety. He told me that we cannot discriminate against the ICE agents just because they're ICE agents, and I said, well, they discriminate against us every day. When I got home, got a phone call. He let me know that the area regional manager had seen the video. He did ask me to take the video down. I stated that I would not be taking it down because I felt cowardly if I were to take it down. You know, the video was already out there. There was no going back.
There's no going back. Listen, they gave you an out and you said no because you have free speech. Amazing. America. Good for you. Guess what? There's consequences. Also interesting. It turns out that there are some consequences, like if you're losing the narrative battle, then the first thing you should do is probably call everybody a Nazi.
In 1943, the following directive was issued from party headquarters to all communists in the United States. It read, when certain obstructionists become too irritating, label them after suitable buildups as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic, and use the prestige of anti-fascist and tolerance organizations to discredit them. In the public mind, constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
Perfect. All right. Well, now suddenly they're interested in the Second Amendment. They're suddenly interested in the 10th Amendment. They're interested in arming themselves. They are looking at this room maybe not as a den of ugly fascists. You're looking at a gun room that's up on the website for our friends over at Securit. Guys, I did an interview with the president of Securit a little while ago. I got to connect with them at SHOT Show, and we're going to set up an affiliate program. So if you guys are thinking about buying, organizing, storing stuff, I'm going to be using them in the display for our gear discussions. And anyway, this is one of their images, which I find amusing. And of course, when I say I'm a Second Amendment absolutist, I mean, you should be able to own, belt-fed machine guns and mount them on your minivan. I don't care. I think that'd be cool. If I saw somebody driving around with a minivan with one of these, if you had like a Ma Deuce on top there, like, I don't know, seems cool. I'm down for it. All I'm saying is we're making the left recognize that the federal government having limits. The answer should be de-weaponized government, by the way, depoliticizing all of it. If you don't like the laws, fix them. That's fine. You can do that. If you want to believe that the states are supposed to have power and rights over the federal government, I agree. I'm with you. This is a guy that was a contender for vice president in this country. He was not chosen. They chose Tim Walz. Tim Walz has radical communists that are doing wild stuff in his state. How interesting. This would have been an interesting little, possible adventure or alternate universe where Josh Shapiro was maybe somebody in the White House. I'm glad he's not. I don't want to vote for Democrats. I wish Republicans represented my position. But if he's going to start talking about the 10th Amendment, you got my attention. Here we go.
To prepare for a federal onslaught where they would send troops in to undermine the freedoms and the constitutional rights of our citizens. Think about that for a moment. This is un-American. But I want the good people of Pennsylvania to know, I want the American people to know that we will do everything in our power to protect them from the federal overreach. There is such a thing as the 10th Amendment. I believe the federal government is violating that in Minnesota. We will stand tall and not allow them to violate it in Pennsylvania. We'll defend the people here, and we will stand up to this federal overreach.
Wouldn't it be a wild moment that 2026 America, you got Democrats doing a 10th Amendment revolution that I've been advocating for instead of Republicans? And what happens? I don't know what happens, by the way. It could be a peaceful civil war. But in theory, a 10th Amendment states that the Constitution has some rights in there that are reserved for the people in the states if it's not actually explicitly given to the federal government. And by the way, the interstate commerce clause cannot justify every single thing. You know what it can do, though? Immigration laws. 100% they can go do immigration laws. But all the other federal stuff, all the ATF, all this other BS, the infringements, you're onto something there. Josh, you're so close. Governor Shapiro, do the 10th Amendment. Maybe Greg Abbott will do the same thing. Let's get there. Let's get to the point where we have a nonviolent 10th Amendment revolution and we make the states the most powerful part of this country and the most powerful government that you personally answer to. Donald Trump kind of promised that, didn't he? IRS going away, Department of Education going away, less federal government, funded by tariffs only, no IRS at all. So we shouldn't have a federal income tax. Can we roll back the 16th and the 17th Amendment too? Can we focus in on the 10th? People who don't know history are going to be doomed to have really, really bad outcomes. So maybe we'll get it. I don't believe it, neither do you. So that's okay. Everything was not all about ICE, except when it was all about ICE. So I've got a palate cleanse about ICE and some of the awful things out there from one of our favorite comedians and a good Trump impersonator. Before we do, I'll just let you know, support us, give us a thumbs up, subscribe wherever you're listening, Rumble, YouTube, X. We appreciate you. Join us on Locals if you want, Spotify if you're listening anywhere else. We continue to boost our numbers on Spotify because you guys are getting a better product where you get video and audio. You may hear an ad at the end of this program as well. Let's do palate cleanse. Can we do it? Let's clean this up. It's all about ICE everywhere, including actual ICE, maybe.
Hi, everybody. Comedian Tyler Fisher here, and I'm in bed. I'm just really upset about what happened this past weekend. I usually try to just make funny videos, and no, this crossed the line, and I have to comment on it. I would hope people unfollowed me, if I didn't comment on what happened with the ICE situation this weekend. How could I not? It's absurd. It's unacceptable. Absolutely unacceptable. Because they said we were getting 3 inches of ice. We got, what, a 1/4 inch? I'm covering up pipes with blankets. I got 400 bottles of water. I've stocked up like we're hitting a civil war. Unfreaking believable.
There wasn't that much ice this weekend, and Texans still couldn't go anywhere. He got you. You thought it was going to be a political message. He just wanted a little bit of weather that they claimed. I'm not sure why he wasn't wearing a shirt, but maybe that's why he played the YMCA. God bless all you guys. Thanks for joining us. Put your nasty thoughts in the comments, all your anger about Texas being able to handle winter or whatever other things. All of your thoughts about the Second Amendment. What do you think? Should we arm prisons and just pull the guards out and just put them on an island? I saw that movie. It was called No Escape. It had Ray Liotta. Let's dig into that. Go watch that movie and then let me know what you think about it. Cool. All right. Have a great day. Look forward to seeing you guys on the other end. And if you have not checked out the AMRAD podcast, check out my buddy Steve Friend. It's at AMRAD Pod. We'll raid the spot today on Rumble, and you can find him at the American Radicals podcast on YouTube. See you guys on Thursday.
Thanks for listening to The Kyle Seraphin Show, streamed live weekdays on rumble.com/Kyle Seraphin. Follow Kyle on Twitter, Truth Social, and Instagram at Kyle Seraphin.